Matt, we're here.
We made it, Aaron.
Another month.
Another month.
Matt, guess what I got today?
Man, snap.
That's right. Guys, that back to one last job. We finally have everything. You know what that means. It's
going to be a long weekend for Matt and Aaron.
long weekend of drinking and packaging and probably pizza.
Yeah.
And coffee. But yeah, so everybody that backed one last job, thank you again. Everything's in now, so we can finally get all those packages done. Looks like we're not really going to be behind schedule, so that's fantastic. And then, we'll see what the reception is. So far, we've heard great things from people that read digital, but we know how a lot of you people are. You just want to read the physical copy. We get it. We're similar. Mm-hmm. But yeah, some general house cleaning stuff. Guys, we got Tilt Force coming along. So, be geared up and ready for some information to drop about that. Matt and I did voiceover work for Tilt's motion comic this past weekend. I edited that a bit this morning before work and was giggling my head off.
That's so stupid.
It is so, oh God, but I'm so glad I wrote that character now. But anyway, so guys that like Tilt, the motion comics coming along, everybody's been getting their voice clips to us. So looks like we'll probably launch that at the end of June, I'm hoping. But Matt, tell everybody about Buy Me a Coffee.
So Buy Me a Coffee. It's the new, how did you describe it? It's the Ko-fi / Patreon.
They had a baby.
If they had a weird coffee baby.
Which is perfect for us because we're weird.
Yeah.
We can be babies sometimes.
Yeah. Anyway, it's a nice little Patreon version for us. It's easy. You could buy us coffee. You could subscribe and get cool rewards. That's always a plus. And we've got quite a few. We got a few so far. Yeah. And some people bought us some coffees, and we appreciate it because I do like the fact that there's a goal that you could set on there, which is something cool that they do. And guys, we need internet is what we're saying. That's what that goal is for.
Yeah, guys, we put a goal, and that is one of the things I like about Buy Me a Coffee is it's visible. You can see what the goal is. But yeah, we have one set so that we can get the hardlined internet out to the studio because the Wi-Fi, it's okay for recording, but for streaming, it's just not even worth it. But we'll get there. We appreciate everybody that has jumped on so far and people that have become members. Big shout out to our members. You guys, we sent out our first little 3D printed Catalyst logo. So that one's out in the world. The person really dug it. So I think it's a cool thing that we're going to do. And I think we have 6 more slots for whoever becomes members on our Buy Me a Coffee. Whoever the next 6 are, you get one of those as well. So make sure you check it out. And then, as always, you can find all of our stuff at catalystcomicstudio.com. That's where you can get our books. I got locked out of the website for a minute, and Travis completely missed my message. So he didn't know to give me my new login info for like the last 3 weeks. So anyway, he saw the message today and sent me my login information. So I'll get that updated because there's some stuff we need to update everybody on. And make sure you stay there for all your, big news announcement stuff we have coming up as well. And hi, John, I see you throwing up the rock fist. But we're going to get into the actual point of this show and stop talking about our stuff because the point of this show is not for our stuff at all. It's for our guest stuff. So tonight we have Dave Swartz. He's an illustrator. He's a writer, creator. He's a musician. He's the host of Higher Consciousness on YouTube, which is hilarious. As someone that doesn't even smoke, I think it's freaking hilarious, and he's a very chill guy. He's created titles like Feast or Famine, Atlas Origins, and Confederate Monsters. So, without further ado, let's get to the point of the show. Pudge, ABCD.
Oh, my goodness.
I gotta remember to say that. I gotta put something on there. But yeah, that's what's up, Dave?
Hey, what is up, guys? That is some awesome production value. I'm digging the show.
Oh, thanks, man. We
Look
have
at
no
us.
idea what we're doing.
We're impressing people.
That's nice.
Yeah, we have fun with it. You know, we like to make it matter.
Yeah.
But you're our second guest for this because you were one of our final guests on the final episode of Beards and Comics Live.
Oh, that's
So-
right. Yes, absolutely.
So after you were on that, we were like, you know what, just forget Beards and Comics Live. You know, since Dave's been on it, it's just not even worth.
Just that's it.
That was it.
Where do you go from there?
Well,
Right?
All right.
Just have to stop, make a new show, and
So
then invite Dave on to ruin it. Just
Exactly.
wreck it.
2 episodes in, we're already going to cancel it.
trying to come in and christen it. How about that?
Yeah, that's what
That's
we mean.
right.
That's what we mean.
Sorry, I am throwing some links for everybody to daveswartzart.com, as well as Confederate Monsters and Buddy.
Nice. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
If it'll... Okay,
it's
there we
it's
go.
up there.
Yeah, it looks
I see
great.
it.
Too.
Took a minute.
Popping up.
Oh,
There,
look at all these links.
clickables.
Good.
We call them clickables. All right, let's get into the point of the show. So this is all about you and the worlds that you create. So Matt and I don't have to do a lot of work here because we get to let you talk about stuff. But I want to talk about, we could talk about any of your projects at any point. So just whenever you have flashbacks or, you know, shell shock, whatever it is, we can go back to that. But I know Confederate Monsters because that's when we met you. So that's what Matt and I know of you. So I thought it would be cool to kind of have a little discussion on the creation. I guess kind of start off with a synopsis of what the story is even about. And then we'll get into kind of how you created the world behind that story.
Sure. Sounds great. So Confederate Monster, for those who are unfamiliar, is basically a story that takes Frankenstein and the characters of Frankenstein and puts it into the era of the Civil War. So we don't typically, see very much of Igor and his perspective throughout these, Frankenstein stories we've seen over and over again throughout, almost 100 years, and for me, I wanted to kind of tell this story through a different character. So I chose Igor, and through Igor's eyes, we get to see this, 8 years later, things have changed. These characters are, completely different. But he himself has, completely transformed into someone who you would not recognize as a traditional Igor character. He's more of a protege of Victor Frankenstein, very kind of suave and debonair. He's established himself living in Virginia during the end of the Civil War as a reconstructive surgeon, kind of helping to repair broken soldiers that are coming back missing limbs. So he is eventually found out, though, by this secret group of Confederate generals who are looking for ways to turn the tide in their favor for the war. And so they rather gruesomely convince him to reanimate the entire army of dead Confederate soldiers. So it's just an epic, war kind of story, but told in this Frankenstein world with monsters and kind of these undead soldier zombie things and, all kinds of stuff that you haven't quite seen before in a Frankenstein story.
Yeah. So where did that come from? Like the way that you put these particular things together in such a setting as the Civil War?
Yeah. So, I had my first comic was Atlas Origins. It was a traditional kind of superhero comic. And at the end of that book, I was really trying to, I self-published it. So at the end of that book, I was really trying to find a book or a story that I could get a publisher to greenlight. So at the time, I was trying to also challenge myself as a writer, because I'm traditionally more of an artist, to write some different stories and different, genres. So I wanted to write 3 pitches. I chose horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. So I did all 3 of these stories, and I, did the little, pitch, booklet, whatever. And my horror story was Confederate Monster. And when I thought about horror and I thought about what I wanted to do with it, I don't know, for whatever reason, I just gravitated towards Frankenstein. I gravitated towards this idea of an undead, this play between life and death. Because at the time, I was super into philosophical research and theories of alternate realities and things like that. Still am, but at the time I was super heavy into it and looking for ways to interject a lot of that information into these stories. And this story for me was my way of discussing sort of this idea of life and death.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with Frankenstein, and I kind of wanted to put it into a different setting. I thought about World War II, but God, everybody's done World War II. I thought about World War I, but at the time that I was writing it, I believe the first Wonder Woman came out, so I was like, I don't want to do World War I. Just did it, and I thought about Vietnam and all those other, and I was like, no, it doesn't feel right to me. So for whatever reason, I don't know why I landed on Civil War, but I got thinking about it. I was like, man, that's actually pretty good because it's not too far away from the original setting of the book.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe like, I don't know, 100 years or so.
Right.
But at the same time, it's not in that super high technological age,
mm-hmm.
Where I can kind of play in the middle and do whatever I want, essentially create a new take on the reanimation process, a new take on the characters themselves. Even create new versions of characters that aren't traditionally, in the book. So I, for one, just when I saw all of that, I took a step back. I just realized there's a lot of meat on that bone, and I feel like a lot of people would agree. So I wanted to, dive in there and see, what else I could, pull out. And honestly, when I did, it just felt like the story wrote itself. There was just so many layers of metaphor and story arcs that will fit really well with the story I was trying to tell and that time period. So, to me, it was just a match made in heaven.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different kind of story put in a different kind of time. But I think that's what makes it something that's definitely unique and not like anything else that I can remotely even think of. So
bravo.
With that, yeah, so bravo. So with that, is there a history behind the world that this is set in, or is it literally just a transposition of our reality?
Well, I would.
Or have you decided?
I would say things like that are almost in a way constantly evolving, because I've obviously had questions of well, are you planning on continuing the story? Is there more to it? How does this fit? Does it fit within any of my other previous stories in their universe or world? For me, I kind of just look at it as right now ever evolving, but at the moment, I would say it is very much a close to our current reality, but I think a little bit of a twist, obviously, because I want mine to have a completely different. Well, I shouldn't say completely different, but it's very different than the original Frankenstein story. So in my mind, when I set out to do this story, I wanted to, keep as much of the original as I could as its backstory, but I wanted to also make a couple of adjustments in order to serve my overall story, right? So I had to kind of play with that a little bit, but I think the chance to go back and play around with that is super fun. It affords me, the opportunity, like you're kind of describing, to create another universe, another dimension, another facet of this Frankenstein myth, because it's really at this point a legend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So are there different rules that exist in the particular society that you have set up in your story, or?
I would say that everything politically and everything within the culture is pretty on point with what was historically accurate. I would say the only thing that I took some liberty with is some of the characterizations. of the actual historical figures, because I felt like it fit my story a little better to make. So I have, like, for example, General Stonewall Jackson. So I have him in the book. He's the main villain. However, in real life, he wasn't as twisted and like crazy racist as he is. I mean, I'm sure all those guys at the time, I mean, they're slave owners.
Right.
They want to keep, the
Right.
of slavery, alive. But he's not like General Forrest, Nathan Bedford Forrest, who is the first Grand Wizard of the KKK, right?
Right.
Who's also in the book. But, when you look at those two guys in my book, if you were to look at them historically, you would maybe think Forrest would be the main bad guy because he's like super ruthless in real life. But in my story, the dynamic is kind of switched. So, but I did that for a reason, and it'll become apparent. But again, I do try my best to keep it as historically accurate to what we remember. However, going back and just sort of tweaking little things to serve the overall story.
What did that research process look like for you? I mean, was it a time period that you were already interested in, or did you actually have to go back and do a lot of research for it?
Oh, I was really interested in it to begin with. I mean, I remember, it's funny, as I was researching it, I had these memories flooding back of my middle school days. I believe I was like 7th or 8th grade or something like that. And we were studying this time period, and the history teacher set up this huge like Civil War day where they brought in like these Civil War kind of reenactment kind of guys, and like the people that blew glass and did the blacksmithing and like the dressing and all that sort of stuff, and like taught the kids how to dance and stuff. So it was like a very immersive.
So they made learning fun.
Right, exactly.
What?
A very immersive experience. Plus, I'm from Michigan, so we have Greenfield Village, which is close to the Henry Ford Museum, and Greenfield Village is essentially like a capsule of that time period. Where like Edison and those guys were coming up at the turn of the century. I mean, a little later than the Civil War, but it's a similar kind of thing where a lot of those memories are kind of flooding back. And I thought, oh man, I totally forgot that I have a lot of experience with this type of, environment and time period and dress and technology. But yeah, when I was beginning the research to write it, not only with the script, but visually, just pulling all the research together for the, reference together for that, was fun, just trying to find what's historically accurate again, but then what I can tweak about it that's going to make it into something new. And what else I can do to make the book even more historically accurate. There's a scene where we look inside Igor, or his name in the book is Daniel. Dr. Daniel Schmidt is his, alias. And in his studio or office, I wanted to have it look very accurate. So I found a lot of images of mechanical equipment and all kinds of things that you would see in a normal doctor's office at that time. So I tried to just flood that page with as much of that visual texture as I could. To sell the setting, to sell the environment, to make it immersive. So yeah, lots of research goes into it, lots and lots of time making sure that what I want to be historically accurate is in there, but I'm not, missing opportunities to elevate the story.
Okay. So you're not planning on doing anything just to mess with timelines and all that kind of stuff?
I mean, I'm not specifically, going in there to mess around with the timeline or to.
Don't butterfly effect us, man. Don't do it.
I'm not planning on doing things like that. However, there is a certain quality about the story that you can tell where this could have happened, but maybe it's not recorded.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Matt, what you got?
I got nothing, no, I'm listening. I'm here to listen.
Give him some art questions,
man. What were the art struggles with it? Did you have any? I mean, now you've been drawing for a while. How many books do you have under your belt?
3 myself and probably about 5 total.
Okay. Yeah. So you're not like, I've got so many I forgot to count, but you're still more along than most. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now Confederate Monsters, is it you did all 3 separate? Because I saw on Indiegogo it's 1 through 3.
Yeah.
So
So
you just
so the Indiegogo that we have currently is just for the first half. So it's just issues 1, 2, and 3. You'll get those in individual floppies, and then I'm planning on coming back around about a year from now to pick up the second half and to also do a collected edition. So my plan is to do issues 4, 5, and 6 as individual floppies, and then do a both hardcover and softcover collected edition, as well as I really hope to do a black and white version as well, because I'm so excited about just the black and whites. There's something about how black and white and the story just works very well together.
Absolutely.
It's funny you should talk about the art struggle, because in the beginning I did actually have a bit of a struggle where I was trying to find what I was going to do, because I had grandiose plans and lots of ideas that I tried out, but in practice it just doesn't translate as well. So for instance, one of the things is when I first started, I was adding a lot of these sort of tonal shades, almost like a charcoal kind of brush that I found in my program. So I was adding a lot of these tonal values into certain areas of the page. And at first it looked very cool, but the more I did it, the more I was like, ugh, this just looks so muddy,
Yeah, the struggle.
Yeah, and it just becomes a certain thing where you're like, as the artist and the guy in charge making all the decisions, you have to decide, do I want to pursue something that I'm not comfortable with? And then usually the answer is no. So you want to come back and say, how can I improve this? And I just decided to do away with it. If I need it, if it's needed, I'll do it. Right. So sometimes if it's like super gory or super dark or heavy, then I'll use it. It's appropriate. Right. But it doesn't have to be plastered everywhere. And I don't have to set boundaries and rules on myself where it's like, I have to do this here. Right. But another example too is I was playing around with these dot pattern textures that I bought, and they're sort of like the traditional kind of
Ben-Day dots and
exactly.
gradients,
so,
and
playing around with those. And at first I wanted to do everything in that kind of,
it looks so retro and cool.
Yeah, and I was just like, oh my god, it's so awesome. But I realized that it would take me 3 times as long.
Right.
So I realized, what, it's awesome, but I can't. So what I decided to do instead is just put a nice paper texture, a nice sort of like aged paper texture on there. It gives a similar effect. And what I can do is I can inject those little dotted, textures when I want to, right? So I typically, if there's, again, blood and gore, I kind of throw that in there kind of just to make it look more textured and kind of weird. And if there's any other areas that I feel appropriate, I'll throw it in there, But again, you got to understand what's the right amount, because if it's too much, it's just going to be a mix.
Right. I think it's that, but then it's also the problem as another artist. This is the problem that I always have, is how much do I want to leave up to the colorist,
right?
And how much do I want to do as the artist? Like a lot of people will do heavy blacks if they don't trust their colorist, or if they don't want to put all the faith into them. You know what I'm saying? Like it'll still hold if they just drop a paint bucket tool in, and go about their day. You could just have flat colors, but did you grow up that style of art, or were you trying to do? Are you leaning more into the newer, almost coloring book line work? Let the colorist do their thing. Now, even though you are the colorist,
right? Yeah, sure.
Like
it's a little different.
Yeah, your style wise.
Well, I will say that for me, I've kind of evolved in different ways. So I would say that when I was just coming up, I was much more of just a coloring book line art drawer, and just thinking, oh, I could do the painting. It's not a big deal. Or like you said, someone else can do it. No big deal. But the more I learned about drawing, the more I learned about layout and visual flow and balance and contrast and all those things. I started to realize that I needed more contrast. I needed more black. I needed more of this balance, right? And honestly, the thing that truly propelled me in that direction.
Hold on, let me get my notepad out. Go ahead.
Honestly, what really put me in that direction was working with Joseph Cooper on Feast or Famine. So he was the penciler inker on Feast or Famine. So it was a 3-issue run. It was about 96 pages. So I worked with him for probably about 6 to 8 months on that book. And the whole time it was like an education every single day, getting a new page in the email, getting to look at how he translates my script into this layout, into this vision of his. And he's a master at it. I got to learn from a master. That's the thing that I look at it. And, not only that, I had that experience with Joseph Cooper doing Feast or Famine, as well as we did another book together, where the comic book history of basketball, where, he did the pencils and the inks. I did all the coloring again. And I got to watch another 166 pages come my way, so getting to watch all of this work come my way and see how he does it, see how he does this, and getting a chance to like look at the high res stuff and zooming in and being like, yeah, he's really not that tight there. I don't have to be so neurotic about my work. You know what I mean? Yep. And you pull back and you go, oh yeah, like it can be a little more loose and it looks more alive, Right. So it's like things like that you learn just by watching. But I did work as an assistant for John Malin for a little while. And he did a run on Thunderbolts like 2-3 years ago. God, no, way longer. Jeez, I was going to say like 4 or 5 years ago now. Jeez, I'm getting old.
Like 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a long time. But I will say he taught me a lot. I mean, he studied under Rob Liefeld. So, I mean, he taught me a lot about how to lay out a page and how to punch up the action and how to take your idea and put it up to another level. If you're thinking about this, take it to another level every single time,
Right.
So, a lot of different things have helped me shaped my, perspective on creating a page that really captivates the reader, so that you're not going to get bored. I've also taught these comic book classes as well. I done graphic novel classes. Just to be able to teach has also helped me conceptualize the best way to go about my process every time I sit down to do my own pages, right? I kind of have my own lecture in my head as I'm going about it, right?
All right, so I told these kids they have to do this, so if I don't,
right.
They're going to know.
I do it all the time where I'm just like, you know what? Like the depth is not enough here. Like I'm not pushing it enough. I would tell a student to push it further, so I'm going to push it further. So yeah.
Right. All right. So let's ask I'm going to ask the typical art question just because I want to know. Are you more of a traditional guy, digital guy? Did you start out obviously traditional, but then pushing more digital just because it's faster, like most people are doing?
Yeah. I mean, 100%. I mean, when I worked for John, that was kind of a necessity. He worked digital, so in order to even do any work for him, I just had to, adapt. And I wasn't used to it at all, and I actually had to learn like on one of those like crappy, tablets where you're not drawing on the screen.
I couldn't do it.
Dude, so I colored all of Feast or Famine on that like little tablet, so I did the whole thing that way, and I got really used to it. But coloring is one thing, drawing is a completely different animal, so I was learning the best that I could, but I knew I needed to graduate to a Cintiq. I bought a Cintiq, and that really elevated everything. I mean, just totally night and day. I felt like I really took a huge step forward. And a lot of the programs that we were using as well helped me to elevate my perspective drawing, my overall concept of how to lay out a page more dynamically, everything. However, I will say I don't lax on my original traditional skills. I do participate in a weekly draw stream with some of the Alterna comics guys,
oh, nice.
So yeah, Rob Geronimo, he does a live draw stream. He does a Blood Realm for Alterna, and he has a live draw stream that he does every Tuesday. So I chime in there as often as I can. I'll definitely be on there tomorrow night. But
Very cool.
it's just whatever he wants to draw, and we just all kind of follow along. And it's a really fun thing to do to keep my traditional chops up and to prove to myself I can still do it.
Right.
You get used to a lot of those like digital crutches, and I will say it is kind of a crutch in ways, because I can do it traditionally, but I'm going to be taping rulers and like going
right.
It's get my perspective lines, you know what I mean? So
right. It's I have the argument too, because people will say that same thing, but I don't think that straight line is any better if you draw it by hand or you use a ruler.
Yeah.
Like I'm not impressed if you did that by hand. I mean, I kind of am. But then I go, why? You could have just used a ruler and saved yourself time, or like made sure it was perfect when you did it. So it's just, I'm okay with tools using. It's like, when you first start out as an artist and you get told you don't want to use reference because you think it's cheating. It's the same thing, But then when you realize everybody does it, that's how it works.
It's funny too because there's all different levels of it, right?
Right.
So like, we all do different things, and for me,
I'm not going to photo bash anything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
I'm never going to do that. But I mean, I never use reference. I mean,
but I'm not an artist on Daredevil, so we won't have to worry about that. So.
But again, I've seen that so many times where people just they take photos and they just trace over top of it. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, and even not even comics. Like, I was a storyboard artist for a long time, and I've had jobs where people would come to me and they would say, hey, can you do it like this? Or, we had another, artist working on this book. We need you to just jump in and help out. Here's some of the boards they've done. And I look at it and go, they're tracing this stuff, right? And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. Like, well, yeah. Like,
they get it done so fast.
I mean, there's certain things I don't mind people doing that I would do, like a cityscape. Like, I'm not going to go trace, I'm saying, like cityscapes and stuff like that. But yeah, like if you're just tracing people's those books, the comic books. I know we're getting on a high art horse here.
Go for it.
Of the hey, let me just take a photo of every like character and just have them pose in the books, and everything's so stale. Like absolutely. That's my problem with it. Like, if you want to do a book like that, it's fine, but there's no energy to it. It's just.
And I'm totally fine with people, like, say you're drawing like the Millennium Falcon in every single page of the book. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine to have like a model of that and you're tracing over top of the model. Like, that's fine. You know? But like you're saying, like, if you're gonna do that with people, like, you're gonna lose something. There needs to be, like, comics is all about like dialing it up to 11 or 12 or 15. Like, you need to just exaggerate the human body to a level that you can't capture in real life. So it's everybody's got their own little thing. Yeah,
that's okay. So I guess we could get back into the creative stuff. I know Aaron's probably.
I was just a question though, was if you guys think that robs.
Yes.
Are we going to call Rob? Whatever. It's his world.
It's your world. We're just living in it right now, Dave.
Do you think
we're going to chime in?
That robs what creativity even is, if that's what you rely on for? Because at what point does that?
I mean, it's. Sorry to interrupt you, but I guess for me, I go back and forth on it because it depends on. To me, it depends on the final product. If I look at the final product and I can see, like, you've taken the time to finesse it and to make it beautiful and to change it enough that it is artistically creative, then I can have a different opinion about it. But again, like most of the stuff that I encounter these days, I have to have a personal experience with, and I'm never going to like say all of this is bad or all of that is bad. No.
Right.
I want to have like an intimate personal conversation about this particular thing. I'll have my opinion about it, and we can move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? But when it comes to this kind of stuff, if someone is just like regurgitating it out there and just not finessing it and not really caring about it, then why should I care about it? You know what I mean? So it all has to do with energy in my mind at the end of the day. So if you put good energy into it and you're really trying to make a good quality product that's creative and interesting, and that's what you want to do, that's great. But if you're just trying to regurgitate it out there because you're trying to make money, then it ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing with any kind of creative outlet.
Yep.
If you're just doing it for money, you can tell the people that are just doing it.
Yeah.
Especially in comics. That's something that Matt and I talk about so much, is like, if people would just please stop.
Yeah.
Stop watering down the market with stuff that you think is, I'm going to do this just so I can get to Marvel.
Yeah.
First off, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Secondly, if that's your only goal when you create a book, it's very apparent when it's read, because there's no passion or drive or actual love for the craft behind it. It's just regurgitation of stuff.
It's kind of interesting because it's like, Kickstarter has their thing like projects we love. So in a way, it's sort of like placing a badge of like approval or like curation, if that's appropriate, on.
It means nothing anymore.
That's what I'm saying, is now it means nothing, right?
Right.
But it would be interesting if they had some kind of like panel where you could apply, where you had like a very special thing that you had to apply to, and it was, very curated by peers. There were people that were judging you that you knew in the field, and that was at every level, right? Because comics is just one part of what Kickstarter and these other crowdfunders do. But no, I have had that thought and discussion with many people about the fact that the market has now become quite flooded with, with all due respect, projects that just aren't going to garner the same amount of attention because they don't have the same amount of attention garnered to them.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can always tell that stuff when they come back around for the sequel issues.
Yeah.
Like if you have to truly rely on, I'm going to touch another nerve again, but if you have to truly rely on nude covers and cosplay variants to get a book sold,
Jesus
I mean, then it's just, and nothing against it, because there's some beautiful art that I've seen done for those kind of things. But at the same time, if that's what we were talking to somebody and they were bringing up the point of the reality is that some of these books like that, you're never going to see them in a shop. You're never going to see them sold publicly. The only place that they can get sold is online. And that's why a lot of those campaigns do as well as they do.
Right.
But for the rest of us, we just struggle bust through our campaigns.
Right. Well, it does, in ways, it does kind of suck the air out of the room in a way. I wouldn't say, I wouldn't necessarily say that we're all competing in the same arena. You know what I mean? There's a lot of books that are just in serving different markets and serving different demographics.
Absolutely.
And that's just always going to be the case, right? But I will totally 100% agree with you that I am not entirely a fan of using gimmicks and things like that in order to sell. I understand, hey, at the end of the day, people got to eat, like people got bills to pay and they want to make money. I get it. But like I've said a lot, and I think a lot of people that may know me or are going to get to know me, I mean, I'm all about energy, and things are all energy. Everything that you are, everything that the world is made of is all energy. And if you're going to constantly be kind of like putting that energy out there, behind your creative pursuits, like I'm only doing this because I know sex sells and I know this is going to sell, then it's not going to really garner you, I think, the thing that you want. Now, like you said, there are people out there that's what they're into and that's what they want. And I want that for everybody. I want everybody to be able to, get their entertainment and get the type of stuff that makes them feel, good about themselves, whatever it is, you know what I mean? But for me, I just have different tastes, and I think everybody has different tastes. And that's kind of the nice thing about crowdfunding, is we can kind of serve that, kind of neat.
Right.
Everybody has a different taste. But again, like you said, there's just certain things that aren't going to be absorbed by the public at large. And, maybe we should think about having another kind of way of, serving other projects that don't necessarily lean on, female anatomy to make money.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's weird to try to like put creativity in like one certain thing and you can't, it's like we're trying to pinpoint it. And I think that's why we like doing these kind of shows with other creators, because it's, me and Aaron just definitely don't think like that, but I'm not opposed to it either. You know what I'm saying? Like you said, it's not my thing, but like if that's what, again, if you actually just love doing that, by all means, it's just,
whatever. Well, and for me, like, I don't really talk about this very much, but I mean, I guess it's,
we're here to share. Go ahead, Dave.
Right. I mean, like, I have, I have friends in the comic book community that go back and forth on this whole political stuff,
Right.
And,
Same.
Right. So, like, I personally, I got into it pretty heavy there when I was with Alterna, and a lot of stuff kind of blew up. And honestly, I just wanted to be not part of it, because I'm not part of the drama. I'm just more about creating books. I mean, we have our work cut out for us as it is.
Yes.
Trying to make comic books, let
Yes.
alone like being in these little feuds and fights constantly and trying to feel like we're on top,
Well, what's adorable about it, and I hate to cut you off, but what's adorable about it is any of us thinking that we're at the level that those conversations really even matter. Nobody cares what we think on stuff.
Honestly, that's what it is we're all in these like personal little silos. We can all have whatever opinion that we want, in my opinion. But at the end of the day, if we're making good comics, we're making good stories, and we all have fun discussing these things, that's what we should all be focusing on, right? Personally, sure, just like everybody, I have my own critique of a lot of things that I've seen in the comic world and in entertainment at large. But I'm really not about going online and blasting something just because I didn't like one little thing, or just because I didn't like the way somebody acted, or like because of the way the story was told or the artwork or whatever. Sure, there's tons of bad stuff out there, tons of it. But I don't have to
like what? No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I just try to make better stuff, man. Like, I mean, that's my whole goal. I mean, I constantly say this. My fiance can attest to it. Whenever I'm watching anything and I see I hear some bad dialogue, or I see something that's just super cliche or whatever, I just stop and I'm just going, you know what? That could have just been done way better. It's just gonna be
I do the same thing. I do it to Matt a lot too, where I'll just turn around and be like, I give it 2 episodes before you find out that that's the person, blah, 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 blah.
Or somebody will say the beginning of a line and then he'll turn me and finish it, and I'll be like, and they'll be really close and like, he's like, it's so typical.
It's especially when you're a writer, you're like, that's the lazy way out of that line that I would take. If they were just paying me to be chained to a desk and fill out scripts or whatever, that's how I would finish that sentence.
But when I get into my own, script writing brain and I'm writing out dialogue, whenever I read out a cheesy line or anything that comes remotely close to something I've heard before, I come back and I'm like, okay, I know I can write this more clever. Like, I just got to think about it for a second. And inevitably, it always comes,
Yes.
So I try, and I'm nearly 99% there, getting all the cliche out of my work. But I tried my best to elevate the idea to something I haven't heard before, because that's what I think we're all trying to do. I mean, I just detest anything that's just like, ugh, like I've seen this a million times. Why are we doing the same trope a million?
See, that's literally why our book was created, was to just play off of all that stuff that drives me nuts, just tropes of superhero stories. And I just play off all that stuff, but then underlying all of that stuff is like this actual storyline.
Right.
But those moments of humor that are just like, of course he's going to be in 3 different suits and 2 different issues.
Right.
And just like stupid crap like that, because we've seen it time and time and time again.
Right.
And then you play with it a little bit and mess with people's heads. I think that's what's most appealing to me as a writer in comic books is, we had the discussion about the book that I was talking about earlier. The way that One Last Job ends, I wanted people to see the possibility of the ending happening before it happens, because I don't believe in the whole, like, I'm just going to do this crazy off the wall ending without leaving any red canaries or anything beforehand, just for the shock value. No, I want you to be able to go back and be like, oh, okay, I could see this building up toward that.
Right. Exactly. That I agree with you 100%. You know, that's to me that is a mark of a good writer, you know, because you're kind of teasing it along the way, you're building up to it. It has this sort of rhythm to it, you know what I mean? That when you get to the end, it does kind of have a nice payoff. Whereas what you were saying before, you know, sometimes you have a very sudden, shocking ending for shock value's sake.
Right.
But it doesn't necessarily have that same rhythm. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So
yeah, I'm not writing a slasher. So
right,
I
exactly.
don't need a random knife shoved through the back of the door or whatever. It just doesn't serve a purpose.
Well, think about it visually. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I teach this idea of, I'm going to go all high theory on you, but
go for it.
When I teach, I usually talk about this idea of staccato and legato, and anything that is staccato is very, you know, contrasted, very quick, very, you know, different. Lots of stuff going on. Legato is very blended, very smooth, you know, all that sort of stuff. So it depends on what type of story you're trying to tell and what type of way you want to go with it. Is it going to be incredibly shocking and action-packed and that kind of thing, very staccato, or is it going to be very kind of slow-moving, dramatic legato? These are the types of things that everyone has to think about when crafting a story, because if you don't, you're missing opportunities to elevate it.
Yes. And that staccato and legato can be used within the same story, and you can completely change the way that you pace your comic book, and that's something that I don't think a lot of people even bother to try to master. Not that I'm a master, God knows, but it's stuff that I at least approach and I'm willing to think about. Like if I take a story, I'm willing to take a whole section of a script and just be like, nah, let me erase it. Like this needs to bleed out a little bit more, or this needs to be a little bit choppier. And again, it just, if people would be willing to take the script after they've finished writing it and go through it again, I think it would pay off a lot.
I'm glad you said it, because I did the same thing with Confederate Monster. I mean, the 6th issue is the last one, and it's where, you know, we rip back all the curtains. You see all the secrets, you know, all that kind of stuff is revealed. So I wanted to really make it impactful, right? Right. So I spent time crafting what I wanted to do with it, how I wanted it to be told, that type of thing. I did, I would say, a fairly good job. But then I put it on the shelf for a little while as I was drawing the first issue and getting all that worked out. Then I came back to it, reread it, and I realized I'm not doing the characters enough justice here. You know, it's too typical. It's too, you know, easy. It's too hero. You know, I'm the hero, I'm going to save the day kind of thing. Right. So I was like, nah, this is too basic. So I wanted to elevate it by subverting your expectation a little, changing the characterization, did that. But then again, put it on the shelf, did some drawing, came back to it, and I saw more opportunities to elevate it even more. So like you said, you know, you have some time to digest it a little bit, come back to it with maybe a fresh brain or a different kind of perspective, because as you grow, you're going to have a different perspective. And maybe you find an opportunity you didn't see before. Yeah.
I mean, you should be writing any story because it's something you want to read. Absolutely. So if you write a script and you're reading through it like,
Yeah, exactly. Why would anyone else?
Not a good sign.
Definitely not a good sign.
No. Yeah. But that, again, when you read those things and then you see stuff like that on TV or in the movies and you're going, okay, I know what happened here. You know, like they just ran with it and they didn't give it enough time to digest, you know? So
right.
I want to ask a very controversial question real quick.
Oh boy.
All right. What's more important, the art or the story?
Oh God. Hey, Dave's the perfect person to talk about.
I know, because you're both. This is the best question for an artist.
I'm going to go to war with myself.
Right.
It's about to get real metaphysical in here.
Right.
All right. So I have to give it to the art. Got to give it to it. And the reason I give it to the art is because I could do a whole story and not need any words.
Still write it. You still have to write it.
I know. Technically, there's still
it's still a story, though, right? It's a visual story.
Visual.
Well, but I say that because I know what one of Matt's all-time favorite comic books is.
Yeah.
And the story, it has almost no words in it, but it has a story to it.
Which one is that?
So when that was all the way down.
Yeah, it was Tom King and Lee Weeks, and it was like the whole 3/4 of the book. It was just basically their version of like Roadrunner, and Batman was chasing.
Yes.
And the whole first half of the book was just a great chase scene visually. Like, I was so into it, I didn't realize there weren't any words until I finally hit something where there were words. And then I was like, how far am I in this book? And I realized there was only like 2 more pages, and there's still hardly any. And that's why Lee Weeks is one of my favorite artists. Like, it's just like, when you can tell a story visually that well, obviously there had to be writing. I mean, well, I don't know. It could have said, hey, I just need an amazing chase scene. And then it needs
Marvel styled him.
I mean,
he could
It is
have.
Lee Weeks though.
Yeah, Lee was like, okay, I just need Batman as the Coyote chasing the Joker as the Roadrunner. Make it happen.
Right.
And then DC was like, okay, we got to pay Tom King for this? Really?
But Lee Weeks has to interpret that in a way that tells a story, which I still count as writing. I can't say that just drawing.
True.
Because otherwise it would just be Matt. I could bring up a person's name right now.
Well, that's being the cinematographer, though.
But I could bring up a person's name right now that you and I know, because they were local at one point, that did that, where they just took a book and put like a bunch of their cool pictures together. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about now.
I think so. Wait.
And there's a difference between one that tells a story and one that's just freaky leg.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you're right.
Well, there's a very famous story about Stranko and how he did one of those very first, no word comics with Nick Fury and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And he didn't get paid famously for his writing credit.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote and composed the whole thing visually. And he fought to try to get his writing credit from that because they only paid him for drawing.
See, and I think that's why
it was
I consider,
writing. I see what
exactly. That's why I consider it writing, is because I think you used the perfect word, which is composition.
Yeah.
Because you can take that in the art term, music term, whatever it is. There's still something behind it that forces you to tell a story. I like to say that that art sells in a first issue, but it doesn't sell the second issue as well.
That's actually a good point. I've never thought about it that way, but you're right. A second issue purchase, I think, is more driven by the story. If you're compelled by what's going on in the story, you're more likely to pick up that second issue.
Yeah. Because if you just see a fancy ass book like for the first issue, I'm gonna pick that up. It's cool looking, man. So and then you read it and you're just like, oh.
So I like to say the art sells the issue, but the story sells the series.
There you go. That's a good one.
I think that's a good way to kind of put it.
I agree.
Got to come up with a better one now. No, I'm just
joking. Yeah. Just get back to us. Wait, you got to write a better one?
You got to compose a better one.
Oh, okay.
There you go. It's going to be my new term every time. What are you working on? I'm just composing a comic book.
I'm over here composing a comic book.
That. I'm a word connoisseur, so that is just like gravy to me. I love that.
Now we're all going to use it at least once this week.
All right, so give us a quick rundown of how I know how long are we letting this run for, Aaron? How much time?
We'll wrap it up once it hits an hour.
Okay, so what is it? Not the structure, but your
structure.
That's almost a structure. I'm trying to think of the word.
Composition.
See, you brought up composition. How you go about setting up your story? How do you do? And then art the same way. Are you a pencil guy? How do you do your layouts? How do you do inking?
What does your workflow look like?
Yeah, what's your workflow?
Sure. So doing every step of the process myself, definitely allows me to jump back and forth between whatever type of part of the process that I'm in. However, I particularly like to begin with just a really kind of what a lot of people call the vomit draft, where it's just like read the whole thing as quickly as you possibly can without regard to, grammatical correction, that kind of stuff. So you're just getting it out as fast as you possibly can. And then I take that and I adapt it into more of a formal script so that I understand, okay, exactly this much of this vomit draft is this issue and this much of this is that issue. So I can kind of give it a little more structure, right? And then at that point, after I've got things kind of laid out, then I go in and I start putting in dialogue. I typically don't actually write the dialogue until I have the visual flow of the story done. So I then go back in and kind of do the nitty gritty details of the dialogue and what the characters are actually saying to one another. Now, if that something inspires me to change what happens, in the flow, then it does. But that typically works out the best for me. And then after that, I've got a nice tight script. I do layouts digitally. They're all done at size. I just like shrink the page down. So I'm just doing it really tiny. You know what I mean? To get that, loose and as dynamic of a layout as I can, as well as paying attention to contrast. Because in that layout, I'm still putting in, heavy blacks, to make sure I kind of have an idea of where I'm going, right?
Right.
Then I blow it up. I do another layer of what I call pencils, even though
do like a tight pencil over top of it.
I do not. I would never call it tight. It is not tight at all.
More figured out.
Yeah, it's like basically like volumetric drawing. So I take like the layout that I have, and then I do big shapes over top of everything. And if it's like a close up of a face, I'll try to just throw in the basic, like roughed out face. I don't try to put in a lot of the details just yet, but I'll put in like solid eyes, nose, mouth kind of thing. But when it comes to like background stuff, I'll put in line work. If it's like buildings, I'll put in like suggested lines, but I'm not going to draw in all the little details yet. So that's more of like a foundational volumetric layer. And then I go into inks, and inks is where I do all those little details, all the, fine things and all the little dots and stuff. And go into Photoshop for color, do all of my letters in Illustrator, and then she's out the door. So
nice.
And that's typically my workflow for most things. I actually just did a commission piece. It was a one-page story where the client wanted to feature their soon-to-be husband as Spider-Man and herself as Mary Jane. And they were kind of, she had no idea what kind of story she wanted. She wanted me to write the story. All she did was give me a couple of things that they say to one another, kind of like little things when they were dating. That is kind of cute. And, some things that were important. So they were very religious, so she wanted to kind of have like the Bible in there somewhere. She also wanted to have them kind of talking about church at some point. So there were things like that she kind of started me with. But I did the Marvel method where I just kind of framed out, what I wanted to see visually, because I knew I wanted to end with him as Spider-Man kind of swinging off to save something, right? So I started there and kind of worked my way backwards to the first panel. And then I kind of went in and added them the dialogue, from there. And that actually worked out pretty well. So sometimes I mix and match it, but, that's typically the workflow.
Nice.
Now cool. He's looking for more one-page commissions.
Yeah. And if anyone wants a one-page commission for their soon-to-be fiance or husband or wife or whomever it may be.
I mean, it's a good idea.
I've done 2 of them now, actually. So
Interesting. All right. So, we try to keep it around an hour now because we were really bad with people's time before, and we're trying to be nice people now.
It's all good. I understand.
I want to make sure that we give you a chance to talk about everything that you want to let people know about. Again, for everybody, I did drop a bunch of the links earlier in the chat. So, and then if you're listening to the podcast, they'll all be in the show notes.
All right. Well, I got a lot going on, so I hope I can do this in a short amount of time. So as we stated before, I've got a comic book right now, Confederate Monster, on Indiegogo. It's an in-demand at the moment. I'm going to probably have it open for at least another couple of weeks. I have another crowdfunder going on right now called Buddy on Kickstarter with my buddy, Terry Mayo. He and I are kind of making this Milo and Otis meets Exorcist kind of book. It's very fun, very cool and interesting. So you can go to Kickstarter and check out Buddy there. That has, I think, about 12 more days left. I also have a Patreon if anybody wants to get more behind the scenes stuff. We've been talking a lot about my process. So if you guys want to take a look at my process more up and close, more personal, you can check out my stuff on Patreon, patreon.com/Dave Swartz Art. I also have a lot of my fine art paintings on there as well. You can kind of see in the background behind me. I've been starting this fine art kind of thing. So if you are interested in that, you can check it out there as well. And on my website, daveswartzart.com, where you can find a lot of my other stuff, my books, my prints and commissions. I have a podcast that I co-host with my fiance, Elizabeth, where we talk about the universe and smoke a little Mary Jane, called Higher Consciousness. We're actually wrapping up season 3 this week. So Thursday will be our season finale live show on YouTube. So, and then let's see, did I get them all? I think I got them all. I think I'm going to end it there.
I got them all. After this, and I'll put those in the show notes too. All right.
If anybody wants to find me on social media, it's all just at Dave Swartz Art. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Oh, I did forget one. I knew I had one. I have a new weekly show that I'm doing myself on my YouTube called Dose of Dave. So it's just literally me sitting here talking about, philosophical stuff and anything that comes to my mind that week.
It's awesome. Stick around for a second, of course. But everybody, thank you for checking out iYW. We got to hang out with Dave, and he has some great stuff. So hopefully you guys will check it out. And definitely check out Confederate Monster as well as Buddy. And like I said at the beginning, Higher Consciousness, even if you don't smoke, is still pretty hilarious because Dave's slightly off the rails on it, and that's not a way I'm used to seeing Dave, so it's pretty awesome. But we thank you guys so much. Dave, thank you for hanging out with us, and for everybody else, we will see you guys on the next episode or Beards and Comics, every Thursday. Just saying. Matt, last word?
Do better, be better.